Hi, you're listening to the Rosenfeld Review, where we're just a bunch of blind men trying to figure out that elephant. And I am Lou Rosenfeld, your host. And I'm joined today by Vincent Brathwaite. I almost called you Vincent Brathwaite. Has that ever happened before?
It has not. This is a first, so we can chalk that one up as a first for me.
Yeah, I'm on some mailing list as Clovis Rosenfeld. It's an honor. Vincent is a design leader, speaker, and educator who will be one of our opening speakers on one of the 3 days at the DesignOps Summit, which takes place October 21st through 23rd. I can't believe we're already up to our fourth. And this one is fully virtual, designed from the ground up virtually. We're doing a lot of really fun things at this particular instance of DesignOps. One of the things I'm really excited about is the idea of attending in a cohort, a small group of people with a facilitator. And you get to know them, they get to know you, and attending together, we think, means learning together. And I hope you will consider joining us at the DesignOps Summit and maybe even participating in one of the attendee cohorts. But more important than the cohorts is the content. And Vincent, I'm glad you're part of the program. My understanding is you're working on your talk. I know the conference is, a few weeks out. You got some time, but that most of what you're going to be covering has to deal with the future of design teams and how to make them more inclusive. So you have an interesting project in that space right now. I wondered if you could start off by telling us a little bit about it.
Yes. So thank you again for having me. It is an honor and a pleasure to be speaking at this year's full virtual conference. The work that I am doing and will be speaking on is around the concept of design leadership and race in the future of our teams. And how can we create a sustainable future with our design organization and our teams that reflects the individuals that surround us in our day-to-day lives, right? Which is very diverse set of individuals. And so how can we foster language and also generate a protocol that allows for us to have an engaging and progressive a conversation that allows for us to not be so reactive when events like those that have happened in this year causes us to kind of stop and re-look at how we can do work.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're talking about language. I mean, I will admit personally that for me, when I'm talking about the issues of diversity and equity and inclusion, I get tripped up on using the right terminology. So, I don't know how representative I am, but BIPOC is a new term for me, and I've been using that. And I think that's probably a good term. It may not be a year from now. And that's not a knock on the term, but our understanding is constantly changing. It's not just the language that's changing, it's what the language represents, right? The ideas of categories and so forth. So I remember, talking with my now 17-year-old daughter, who's very interested in issues of gender and sexuality. And, she lists so many different categories. And I think, I read an academic piece that said there's something like 27 classifications of gender and sexuality. And I grew up with two.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to talk about, is disabled a good framing? It would be better to say differently abled is, are terms like underrepresented good ideas to use. And so I think, like as a white guy, I certainly get tripped up by that. I imagine at least some of the listeners are struggling with that too. So I'm really happy you're talking about language, and I'm wondering, like, what do you see helping people kind of get to a place where they have a common language so that they can actually have a decent conversation?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the openness and the willingness to want to have the conversation, right? Because myself as a Black man and of Caribbean descent, right? I don't have all of the language and all of the terminologies used to speak to or to engage with different people who don't from the same background or have the same experience that I have. However, I am open, right? I think one of the things that we have to do as design leaders is to be open to having those types of conversations and being wrong, and those who are listening to be okay with correcting someone if they use a term that is out of place, or one that they don't resonate or identify with, right? I think setting the stage and saying and creating a protocol where, hey, I may not know or I may not have all of the terms that is necessary or that may speak directly to you, but I'm open to correcting myself or to using the right ones, etc. Right. So I think really it boils down to just the willingness and the openness to want to exchange with another human being to learn about how things are occurring for them, right? Just like how you spoke about your daughter and how she, shared with you, her experience as it relates to gender and sexuality and how that prompted you to do some research to learn some more. And I think the same thing has to happen where we can, get inspired to want to go and do our own research if we so choose to want to learn more about a particular experience, a particular culture or race, etc. But we first have to be open to have the conversation.
So there's being open, which is really hard. I mean, that's an excuse, but it's hard for people to be open. We tend just as easily to get defensive. And so I guess that's my question is, what is the protocol for assuming openness? You just have to kind of go first and show you're open before you expect somebody else to show that they're open. I mean, and by protocol, I mean, like, when strangers meet, like when we met, we've never talked to each other before this call. We introduced ourselves and, we made some small talk, and there's a protocol there. We can both assume certain things about the other person, but I wonder if there's a similar protocol that we can do a better job of establishing when getting into issues of race and gender, ethnicity, et cetera.
Yes. I think one is to be the first one, take that first step in sharing where you are, what your limitations are in terms of what you know to be true about, a set of individuals or a culture or an experience or whatever the case may be. I think you as the individual saying, here's where I stand, here's what I know, and here's what I don't know, right? So that the person is aware of where you are, so that if you do say something, they at least have that introduction that says to them, okay, if you say something that it was out of place, I know that you didn't do it with an intention to hurt me. I know that you did out of a space of just ignorance. And so I can now, instead of being defensive, I can just share or say, hey, what you said, you probably don't want to use that term because this is a better term for someone like me, etc. And then you now can receive that and say, oh, okay, cool. I can, correct, and I now know for the next time, or I'll go and do some more research, etc. So yes, it's on the ownership of the individual who, is initiating the conversation potentially, or if you're in a leadership position, say this is where I stand, and I want to let you know that whatever I say or however I show up, this is where it's coming from. It's not coming from a place of intent, but I am open to being corrected.
Yeah, and so I imagine, for you as a Black man, do you how do you see that protocol? Like, do you find yourself? I imagine when you meet someone new, or you have a conversation like this with someone you haven't had it with before, and you don't really know where they're coming from. Do you feel like you're looking for certain signs in them that show that they are open to being corrected, or that they are whatever. I mean, open is, I guess, the best word. Open hearts, open minds. But what are you looking for in that protocol?
So for me, I'm looking for their wall to sort of be let down, so to speak, figuratively. So what does that mean exactly? So that means by how I show up and when I introduce myself, right? I'm going to introduce myself in using my personality in however that shows up, right? And when someone responds, if they respond in a way that demonstrates that they feel comfortable, then that to me says that they are open to receiving and for an exchange and a dialogue to take place where I can, say, hey, actually, what you said could be considered offensive, or, me being receiving what they might say. But the first thing that I look for is their comfortability when speaking with me. Because it's very easy for you to, and there are clues in which you can tell if someone is feeling a little closed off, or they're feeling sort of apprehensive about wanting to engage. And for me, I look for, the shoulders to drop. I look for sort of a resting. I look for the stance of leaning in and wanting to have a conversation. Of course, if this is in person, right? But virtually, listening to the tone of their voice and how they are engaging with me, if they're showing an interest, that to me says that this person is comfortable with speaking with me, and I can, share more, and I am open to listening to more of what they have to say.
So I'm hearing a few things. I'm hearing openness. I'm hearing letting down, really the same thing, letting down the wall. Body language in many cases helps belie the degree or lack thereof of defensiveness.
Yes.
And, obviously language, I just had this really weird interaction recently with someone in the field who kept calling me sir. And it was, it just created all this like baggage in the conversation suddenly that I didn't even know was there. And, well, I guess it's just so interesting how difficult it is to have a conversation when you really think about it. Like when you start to tease it apart, there's so many pieces of it. This is, I guess the people who are doing work in our field in conversation design are absolute heroes because, not just in terms of helping software and humans have better conversations, but I think it's going to spill over into humans and humans. Before we continue this conversation, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you want more, not only do we have a whole bunch of podcasts in our archive, but we have something that's very current, very alive, and very engaging for groups, and that is our communities. Rosenfeld Media runs a variety of communities that meet on a monthly basis for video conferences on a variety of topics near and dear to UX people, ranging from an enterprise experience to advancing research to design and research operations. I want to encourage you to join one of our communities. Again, it is free by going to rosenfeldmedia.com/communities. Not only will you get a monthly video conference that you can listen in on and participate in, ask questions and so forth. We'll give you access to the recordings. And for some of those communities, we're talking about dozens of recordings with really interesting presenters and facilitators. You'll also get a newsletter. You'll get access to an advice columnist. Yes, we actually are providing advice columnists for each community. And finally, if you're interested in our conferences, our communities correspond to our conferences. So you will be the first to know when programs go live, when tickets go on sale, and by the way, most of our conferences sell out, and other good things about our conferences, such as when the scholarship applications open up. So go to rosenfeldmedia.com/communities. You're going to find something that's free, something that's interesting, and it's a great opportunity to find your tribe as well. We'll see you there. Hi, it's Lou Rosenfeld, and I'm talking with Vincent Brathwaite, who will be speaking with us at this year's DesignOps Summit in October. We were having this really meta conversation about conversation and how difficult it is and what we take for granted, how we take for granted that we have enough of a shared vocabulary that we can talk about deep things and that we have a protocol for establishing trust and shared goals in our conversations. And, you can get to a point, I think, of having a difficult conversation and working your way through issues, but there's no cookie cutter approach to get to that point. So I'm guessing that, our listeners aren't going to necessarily walk away from this discussion with a plan or a whole bunch of answers. But I imagine there's some really good questions that you think people should be considering as they work their way through conversations like this.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two big questions that everyone could start asking themselves. And the first question is, what are you missing in terms of knowledge and understanding that will allow for you to be able to engage with other people of diverse backgrounds within your teams, within your organization, right? So where's that knowledge gap? And then the big question, which is a really tough one, and that is, why are you uncomfortable having those kinds of conversations? Because it's when you get to that answer for that question, that's going to present to you the opportunity to explore that area, right? Because whatever's holding you up from feeling comfortable to have that kind of conversation or to engage with individuals in that way will perhaps give you insight to some things that you may need to sit with, right? And explore on your own, right? Some other research you need to do or looking at some previous experiences. So that one is a really big one, but one that is really powerful because once you lean into that area of discomfort, you'll be surprised on what you're able to learn about yourself in future conversations that you'll have as you continue to work with diverse group of people.
It's interesting because in design in general, I like to think we may be more comfortable with our ignorance and are lacking in certain areas related to our work than maybe other fields. Now that's totally a supposition. I mean, it could very well be I'm full of crap here. But I'm wondering if you feel that to be the case, or are people in design no better or worse at leaning into their uncertainty and ignorance than other folks?
That's, oh man, see, with design in general, that's hard because there are areas and pockets within our field where I would say yes. And then there are other areas where I would lean towards the other end where people are a little bit more curious in wanting to explore and get more information. I think the fact that we're even having this conversation now at large, not just you and I, is because unfortunately, I believe that a majority of us as leaders are not trying to have those types of dialogues or engaging in that way. So I would probably lean towards more towards the fact that we're sort of okay with where things are, but my hope is that us as designers and design leaders can become more curious about the way that our organization and our industry is set up as it relates to the individuals that are playing a role in it, because that's something that we have to do when we're designing things for people, right? If we're trying to solve problems for people through an application, through a website, through a product, that we have to get some understanding of who these end users are, right? And I think the same has to be applied to the way in which we engage with people in the world. And so there has to still exist a level of curiosity about individuals who we don't know much about, and less fear of the unknown, right? That should cross over. We can't sort of like turn off the switch and be curious in our roles and the work that we do, and then fearful in our day-to-day life, right? The curiosity should exist in both.
So here's a dumb theory I just came up with, and tell me what you think.
Okay.
So as a collectively, like I think you're saying, we have to be curious about the unknown and empathetic with people we don't know, the customer, the user, and their context, and maybe more so than in other fields.
Yeah.
And yet, I don't know that we've done such a good job with diversity and equity and inclusion as a field. So here's my theory: is that while like you would think we would be doing a better job collectively, on the other hand, we've been in this defensive mode as we've become accepted in certainly the corporate environment. So we collectively feel like the little guy who has to puff his chest up a bit and prove that he's got a seat at the table.
Yeah.
So while we've been fighting for that seat, we've managed to lose sight of some other really important issues like this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I honestly would agree. I think that being a minority in the business world, as designers, there's already that struggle. And I think that because we have made so much progress, as you said, to get a seat at the table, and helping to influence business decisions as designers because of the way in which we think and how we do work, that unfortunately, that fight still it prohibits us from engaging and working through a resolve within our own sort of small sort of group, if you will, right?
I always laugh because as many designers as I've heard complain about being overwhelmed in organizations that are either marketing or engineering driven and how they feel insignificant. I then see designers make other people feel insignificant, like let's say UX writers. I happen to be married to one. Don't tell anybody. Yeah, Vincent, this has just been a great conversation, and thank you for participating in it. I feel like already I have a better grasp on things like protocol and language, and it's just a joy to talk with you. Before we wrap up, I always like to ask if there's a little gift you can give to our listeners, someone or something that they may not know about but should. Anything come to mind?
Yes, something comes to mind. And speaking of this sort of getting access to information that you may be missing, there's this book that I highly recommend that I have read, and I'm going through it again. And it's called Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. And it talks about the caste system as it relates to the US in comparison to India and also in Germany. So during the Nazi regime. So I would highly recommend that you read it. It was an eye-opener for me in some ways and triggering in others, but ultimately it provided a really great context in which to explore and to potentially get some more information to address this issue of race within our organizations and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Vincent, thanks so much. On my reading list, and again, the book is Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. And we've been talking with Vincent Brathwaite, who will be speaking at the DesignOps Summit, October 21st through 23rd. It's a virtual conference. It's going to be an amazing virtual conference. We have come up with all kinds of ways to combat Zoom fatigue, including having great people with great subjects like Vincent's. Vincent's a design leader, speaker, and educator. You can learn more about him at Vincent J. Brathwaite, Brathwaite.com. Vincent, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
listening to the Rosenfeld Review, brought to you by Rosenfeld Media. If you like our show, please subscribe and review it on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. I'd love it if you tell a friend to have a listen. And please check out our website for over 100 podcasts with other interesting people. You'll find them all at rosenfeldreview.com.